In light of the fact that at the end of last Parsha, we learned about the Toledot, the children and grandchildren, and events leading to the departure of Esav from Eretz Canaan without any lien or claim on the land of Israel. He understands that he's not the chosen one. Our Parsha starts off in reading, Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz migurei aviv be'eretz Canaan ele toledot Yaakov. Right? We could say in parallel or symmetrical to ele toledot. These are the events or generations of Esav. In last Parsha, the Torah now writes ele toledot Yaakov. But it says Yosef. Doesn't say that the Toledot, who was begotten of Yaakov, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, but it just says one particular seed of Yaakov, Yosef. We're asking the question, why? And then we're told several facts. Number one, Ben Shvaisrei Shanaya. This is an event that's happening at his age of 17. Furthermore, event number two, Haya Roet Achav Batzon. At work, he would be shepherding with his brothers. Okay, Vunar, meaning not just a young lad, but also serving at Bnei Vilha, at Bnei Zilpa, Neshei Aviv. So he's hanging out or serving the children of the two shvachot, the children of the two maidservants. Interesting, why there? These questions and more we'd like to add on today. But first, before we read more and answer some other basic questions, I want to share with you, I think, something which is necessary to understand what we're about to read. Two portions of the week, this and the following portion after Vayeshev, Parshat Miketz, deals with the children of Yaakov Avinu. We're basically about to be learning about a great event or a series of events that eventually will bring Yaakov Avinu down to Mitzrayim. That's how the Rashbam explains what really the Toldot of Yaakov is about, the events of Yaakov that will bring Yaakov down to Mitzrayim. But before we further this point, I want to share with you some basic ideas that I learned in the analysis of my dear father-in-law, Rabbi Horowitz. Let's go back shortly. When we were in the house of Avram Avinu, we saw one child was desired, the other child was not. Yitzchak was chosen, Yishmael was not. So too in the house of Yitzchak Avinu, one child was chosen and the other was not, and that was Yaakov and not Esav. How could it be? And now we're learning, let me just finish reading, that in the next pasuk, I'm skipping in the middle of verse 3, it says, V'Yisrael ahavet Yosef mikol banav. We saw that in verse 3. Mm-hmm. Of all the children, of all his sons, Yisrael loves most which son? Yosef. Mikol banav. Did he love the others?
Of course.
Prove it. It says it literally. Mikol, excellent Hebrew. V'Yisrael ahavet Yosef. Mikol, of all his sons, he loves Yosef more. Mm-hmm. So the question we're raising, and it says why? Because he's Ben Askunim, and we'll bring Onkelos' translation that Ben Askunim cannot be the youngest kid because there's only a gap of. Do you know that all the 11 sons, including Yosef, were born to Yaakov maybe in a gap of a term of 13 years. That's all. There's not much difference in age between Yosef and all the other sons. So we can't interpret like we usually interpret the word Ben Skunim as he was born, he's my youngest son when I'm the oldest age. That can't be, because we know who is the youngest of all? Binyamin. So therefore, Onkelos says, you don't have it, you have it in that section, you have it. You're one of the few here that has, I think, Onkelos. I think also Ariel also has. Ariel, you also have Onkelos' translation. Yeah. There he says in Aramaic, Bar Hakim. Hakim from the word Chacham. What is Chacham?
Wisdom.
The wisest.
Wisdom, yeah.
He's the wisest. He's the one which is closest in abilities, Torah abilities, and also some others explain as far as character traits and features. He's the most likened to his father. Well, you wouldn't want to use the word the spitting image, but in the image meaning the spiritual image, that he's like his father. So he's chosen more than the others. Now, could it be that this is happening? That the Ben Askunim, this most promising son, he is being chosen above the others? What can we learn from this situation to today? How is it relevant to ourselves? So we'll try to understand these matters. But first, before understanding more, let's go back to our grandfather, Avram Avinu. We've mentioned several times in Ashurim the famous covenant called in Hebrew, Berit Bein Habitarim, the covenant of the pieces, where there God promised Avram Avinu the following. We'll repeat it again. Yadoa Teda, surely shall you know. Ki ger yezaracha. What is the edict? What is the prophecy? Your seed will be a ger, will be a stranger. Be'eretz lo lahem, in a land which is not theirs. Va'avadum, and they're going to be in servitude. Ve'inu otam, and they're going to be afflicted. Now, only when will they come back after being all these things? It says, Vidor Revi'i, and the fourth generation, Yashuvu Hena, shall return to here. Why? Not because of them. Because the sins of the Amorites, as the Torah says in that promise, is not yet complete. I mean, they haven't filled their bowls of iniquities and sins, and therefore God revealed his will that he's going to prevent from the seed of Avram Avinu to settle the land of Israel until a much later period. Reasons that are not related to Israel whatsoever. It's a decree to Avram Avinu that only after 400 years will your seed come back. Now, please, I want to make a few points. I want to relate to you two contradictory midrashim regarding this amazing promise of God to Avram Avinu about his seed, about coming back to the land of Israel. There's a famous midrash called the Tanchuma Midrash. Rabbi Yudan, he says, God wants to fulfill the decree of surely shall you know about your seed and so on and so forth. How did God bring this matter upon us? He plotted the events. I repeat, God plotted the events that Yaakov will show preferential love to Yosef. By doing so, it's going to urge or cause the brothers not to like Yosef much at all. They're going to eventually sell him to the Yishmaelim. Very good, Ruvain. And they're going to bring them down to, he's going to bring Yosef down to Mitzrayim. Yaakov will hear about this event later on, that Yosef is alive. Where? In Mitzrayim. So you've all read the movie. I mean, you've read the Torah. Very good. That Yosef is alive in Mitzrayim. And what will subsequently Yaakov Avinu do?
Go down.
Exactly. He will go down to Mitzrayim with his sons. And eventually they're going to be
reunited.
But they're going to be
enslaved.
Slaves. Very good, Hirsch. They're going to be slaves in Mitzrayim. From this midrash, we understand or have insight that as if the freedom of choice was taken away from Yosef and his brothers. That's what we understand from this midrash. The episode that we're about to be reading and learning, it's as if Hashem Mamash is moving the threads, motioning the performance and fulfillment of this amazing decree of the covenant of the pieces to bring down a family to Mitzrayim that eventually will be under or subject to slavery. You see the gentleman sitting next to you? You have to look forward. He said on the last Seder night, we read excerpts from the section of Bikurim in Dvarim 26 and midrashic explanations of the verses. And therefore in the Haggadah of Passover, it's printed, yes, in your Haggadah as well, the decline, the going down of Yaakov to Mitzrayim. And there it says, Anus al-pi hadibor. Anus al-pi hadibor. that according to the decree, Yaakov was in a state of duress. It was if out of his control. I repeat, a quote from a different midrash about Yaakov going down to Mitzrayim. It is as if it's like in a state of onus, something out of his control. That's the word anus or onus. Okay, it also has a negative term if a woman, God forbid, is raped. The word onus, raping, out of her control, is used. My dear friends, in regards to the Talmud Bavli, my father writes it in this great article. The Torah, the Talmud Bavli says that Yaakov Avinu was worthy to go down to Mitzrayim, even if it needed to be to chain him up with iron chains. But you know what? God had mercy on him, and he came down to see the viceroy or the assistant to the king, Yosef. Here we see several midrashim and understandings that these events that we're learning is divinely led. However, this conclusion that we have stands in contradiction to a different Gemara that I want to share with you that appears in Masechet Shabbat, page Peitet, Daf Yud, page 10. And there, the Talmud wants to teach us as parents, future parents, an educational lesson, not to show preferential treatment to one of your children. Do not show preferential treatment. Why? Because a garment that has the weight of whatever there it says 2 slaim, sela is a currency coin at the time of the Torah, because of a garment that Yaakov ordered called the Ketonet Pasim, you all saw it in the initial matter, that Yaakov dawned upon and gave it a gift to who? Yosef. To Yosef, very good. He didn't give it to the other sons, did he? And because of this, the jealousy of the brothers was aroused, and the matter evolved, and our forefathers went down to, not Alabama, down to where? Mitzrayim. To Mitzrayim. This Gemara, what do you want to say?
I also heard that Yosef, it wasn't only that he had a garment, but he'd also always tell on them.
Okay, we're going to get to that. That's written literally. We're going to get to that in a moment. We're going to get to that to the moment. My dear friends, it seems that the involvement or the personal choice or decision by the father, Yaakov, is the cause of eventually bringing down everyone to Mitzrayim. In other words, we can understand this simple Gemara and say, well, the decline of the children of Yaakov Avinu going down to Mitzrayim was a result, a consequence of human decisions. In this case, the decision made by Abba Yaakov, Yosef, and the brothers. Then Ariel started mentioning the actions of Yosef vis-a-vis his brothers. It seems that the going down to Mitzrayim is a result of their personal or freedom of choice. A short way to resolve this matter is the words of the Abarbanel, and then we're going to get into the text in a moment. The Abarbanel says, this decree of Yadoah Teda, surely shall you know, is the end result. We're going to be down in Mitzrayim, and we're not going to be able to inherit. I'm sorry, I go back. It does not say in the decree to Avram Avinu that per se it's going to happen to Mitzrayim. The Abarbanel says it could be that we might remain in the land of Canaan under the realm, under the leadership of who? Canaanites. And that's equivalent. We once said this months ago. That's equivalent to being like a stranger not in your land. What does it mean, a stranger not in? You could be in your land, but you're treated as a stranger. Namely, you don't have any sovereignty. So the Abarbanel explains that decree given to Avram Avinu. Yadoah Teda, surely shall you know, to be a stranger in a land not yours, that we could have ended up here in the land of Canaan, not as a sovereign entity, and that could have happened. However, all the events that led eventually that we're going to go down to Mitzrayim were what? The decisions of great individuals like Yaakov and his children. They acted under their freedom of choice. And they could have ended up here had they made other decisions. Yet we would still go through the decrees here in the land of Canaan. Now, if that's the case, we eventually want to understand, how did these great righteous people, Yaakov and his sons, ended up, quote unquote, messing up? Where were their mistakes that eventually led that we're going to go down to Mitzrayim? Okay, so before we begin to build an understanding by learning the text, first we have Renan and then Yaakov.
So a few parsha, you say that when Yitzchak go to Philistine, he was already in Galut.
That's right. The Rishonim, the medieval, the great commentator Ramban says that. Others say that it's as if he was in Chutz La'aretz. Furthermore, I bring a proof from David HaMelech when he was running away from King Saul, before he was king, and he had no other place to escape to. He went down also to Eretz Plishtim, okay, and he met up, and he felt as if, and he brings a pasuk, and the Gemara says in Masechet Ketubot that going down to that area, being led or under the sovereignty of others, as if it's leaving Eretz Yisrael.
So also Yaakov, when we live with Lavan, it was like 20 years. So this also add in the time that it's a galut.
Yeah, but it's right. That's part of the galut. But we're going to be talking about the eventual nation coming up, and that's going to happen somewhere else. But that's also galut. Absolutely, of course. Yitzchak was the only of the three forefathers that was not in a galut situation. Even though you're right. I mean, he didn't leave Eretz Yisrael proper. He was under the Yitzchak. Yitzchak was born and bred and lived and died in Eretz Yisrael. He was for a short period there in Gera. You're right. He was absolutely in Chutz La'aretz Galut. Yes, Jacob.
You used a word that I didn't know. It was like it's like a barb or something.
Abarbanel, one of the great medieval commentators in Spain. Rav Yitzchak Don Abarbanel. He was high up in the Spanish leadership as well. He was like the economic minister or advisor. I forgot exactly what. One of the great Rishonim, okay, during the time a little after Ibn Ezra that you mentioned before, Hirsch. So there were great Gedolim scholars in the medieval time from Spain, like Ramban. Rambam was there as well. Abarbanel was there. Ibn Ezra was there.
Wait,
a lot of Spain.
Rambam and Rab, those are two different things.
That's right, but they both spent time in Spain.
Abravanel has a great Seder.
A great
Video for
So how do you spell his name?
yes, Abarbanel with Abarbanel.
Barb.
Okay, other points you wanted to make, Mr. Shah?
I was going to say before, why only last parasha does Esav leave Israel, and that's when he realizes he has no claim to the land. When he's been there if Yaakov's been with Lavan for 24 or so years, he's just been chilling in Israel. I assume
The answer to your question, why does Esav pick up and leave and decide? The Torah, unlike when Lot, I learned this from my father-in-law, also Rabbi Horowitz, unlike Lot, where the event that they can't get along together, the shepherds of their sheep cannot get along together, and then the decision is made. Here in the text, the end of last week's parasha, it says the decision was made, and then we read that they don't have enough room. It seems to be an excuse. It's inverse in this time, that decision is made by Esav to leave, and then we read about that there's not enough pasture land for both. It seems like an excuse. That's why the change of order. I saw in the Midrash 3 different reasons why Esav wants to get out of here. One is he's afraid. He says, wow, these children of Yaakov, they killed all the males, all the men in Shem. Got to get away from these radical people. These guys killed everyone in Shechem. There was fear. Remember, even when the sons of Yaakov with Yaakov left the area, we were told Chitat Elokim. There was fear of God on the local Canaanites. That's one answer. He's afraid of them. Second, he's afraid of the PR people, the public relations people in the Tikshoret, ABC News. What is the British news?
BBC.
What? The BBC knows all those. He's afraid he's going to be embarrassed if people find out that he sold his birthright, the bechorah, for a plate of soup, for a dish of lentils, and giving up the spiritual inheritance of the world. It's going to eventually be known. So I better get out of here before it's eventually known. I don't want to be embarrassed in front of everyone. That's what the Midrash says, why he left as fast as possible. A third fact is realizing the facts. And the Esav knows that the land of Israel was given to the seed of Avram in that brit of the bitarim, the brit of the pieces, with an obligation or an understanding that they're only going to come back after 400 years. Esav said, 400 years? Well, that's a lot. I can't wait around to inherit the land of Israel for 400 years. And therefore, he decided to acquiesce and give up his right on the land of Israel. And I don't want a heavy galut. I don't want difficulties, afflictions. I want the easy life. I'm going to go to Eretz Edom. So those are three different reasons, amongst others, that are written in the Midrash. Now, let's get back to the text. Here in the beginning of Vayeshev, we're learning that he's young. He's the main son of Yaakov, Mr. Yosef, and he's working with brothers, but he's also serving Bnei Zilpah. Notice, and that's a question, it doesn't say that he's a Na'ar together with brothers. He doesn't call the children of Bilhah or the children of Zilpah brothers. He calls them, they're the kids of this maidservant and that maidservant. Why? Question one. Question two, Vayaveh Yosef et dibatam ra el avihem. Some of you know from other learnings that the word diba is a bad report. Diba, we see it in the sin of the spies in the book of Bamidbar. Diba, bad report. You got that, Hirsch? Bad report. However, we're going to learn that there's a difference between lehavi as opposed to lehotzi. Lehotzi is going to be slander, to take out. Lehavi is to bring a true report. A true report of bad things happening. Not only is it a true report, lehavi, the Talmud explains that halachically, it's explained that you're allowed to bring a true bad report to someone quietly on the side, not eyewitness news in public, in order, if it's to a person, that can have an effect, an educational change on the people that are doing bad things. Let's just say I got out of hand. And Reuven, he knows that Amos is close to me. Amos has an impression upon me. And Reuven noticed the bad behavior that I'm doing. And one day, on the side, he talks to us. What's going on with this Rabbi Menachem? Can you talk with him? He shouldn't be behaving this way. And you know what? So he told the truth. He told him Lashon Hara, which is true about me, to the side. And then Amos has me sitting down and talks to me. Come on, Rabbi Menachem. You got to stop this type of behavior, and explains to me why. And you know what? He was influential, and I go to him and I thank him. Thank you very much for correcting my behavior. That's permissible. That's what Yosef did when he sees his brothers acting in a wrong way.
Is that why he was doing it?
He, lehavidiba, is to bring a bad report, which is true, as opposed to lehotzi. The meraglim, the spies, in the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, the word there is lehotzi diba, to take out of context, to lie, to change. What we call in English sheker. I mean Hebrew, sheker, which means
Liar.
a lie.
Slander.
Slander, thank you. Lehotzi diba. Lehotzi. Right? Lehotzi, to take out.
Is that an aleph?
So here it's vayaveh, lehavi.
Is that an aleph?
Yes, it's an aleph.
But we still, that doesn't
Is that
show
also
his
no-
intentions.
Yes.
No, his intentions. Okay, so now I want to say the following.
Maybe he liked being a faker.
My dear friends, we're talking here about giants. What do I mean about giants? We're talking about Yosef, Yaakov Avinu, unlike his father and grandfather, who only had two kids. One was righteous, the other is not. Everyone here are kulam berurim, kulam kedoshim, v'kulam osim be'ema u'v'yira retzon konam. They're all holy. They're all righteous. They're all acting to do God's service with fear and with love. like we recite. I just quoted some parts of the blessing of the Shema in the morning today. We cannot start reading about these gentlemen like, yeah, they're one of us. You know, they're one of us. We're looking them eye to eye. We can't even look at them at their level eye to eye. They're so great. They're so holy. The children of Yaakov Avinu. They're so holy. We can't even imagine how great they are. Let's not go down onto a petty level, what they do here at the university, and many universities and Christian universities all over the world especially, and as Jewish academic scholars have done the last few hundred years, ever since the Enlightenment period in Europe, and start treating this as if they're regular, normal human beings. And the jealousy we're reading here is jealousy like between you and me. And the word sinah that could be understood as hatred is how we're going to understand hatred here. Gentlemen, we're not dealing with just any individuals. We're dealing with the building blocks of the holy nation of God. They're so holy, they're so great, yet let us understand where the possibility lies. We have a problem. Why is he bringing the bad report? We're going to understand in a moment that it's true and that it's for the positive purpose.
Breaking the Noach
Midrash, בסדר. One more pasuk. V'Yisrael ahavet Yosef mikol banav. Does he love all his children? You all said yes. Because it says mikol banav, of all his sons. In pasuk 3, you saw that. And who's mentioned? Does it say Yaakov loved?
Israel.
Why Israel? Because he represents the spiritual side of what later will become the nation of God. In other words, he saw the spiritual traits, the character traits in who? In Yosef, that they were so special, so unique, that he sees the greatness of the Jewish people coming out of this person called Yosef. Kiven skunim ulo. Why? There's a reason. And we said skunim here can't be that he's the youngest child, because we know who's much later. Binyamin is. So we explained in the name of Onkelos that he's bar hakim. He has chokhmah. He has wisdom like who?
Yaakov.
His father. He's the wisest. He's the one greatest in ability. One second. For that reason, he made him a ketonet pasim, and we're going to get into it. But before we get into it, I want to begin an understanding here. Again, based upon what my father-in-law taught me, Rabbi Horowitz, about the mistake that's made here, which is going to be a result of subjectivity, which is going to be a result of assumption and not proper judgment. Some of you have learned already in your Torah studies matters of the court of Israel, prosecuting, that everything has to be based, in order for punishment to be issued by the court of Israel, has to be issued by two edim. As the Torah says in several places, edim means, quote, al pi shnayim edim yakum davar. Based upon, al pi, the verbal testimony of two edim, two witnesses, shall a matter be issued, executed, and so on and so forth. I want to refer to the Sefer Mitzvot, the book of Mitzvot of the Rambam, great Maimonides, where negative commandment number 290, I want to read before you just for a few minutes. And he says the following: the 290th prohibition that we're forbidden from punishing someone based upon our estimation, what often is called in legal matters in America, circumstantial evidence. You with me? Okay? Without actual testimony, it's a prohibition to punish someone, even if his guilt is virtually certain. An example: you have a person chasing after not his friend, his enemy, and he wants to kill him. And the pursued escaped into a house, and the pursuer entered the house after him. This is all based upon the Gemara, the Rambam's writing. We enter the house. Yes, you and I, Hirsch and I, two witnesses. We enter the house, and we find the victim lying, Lying, murdered, lying murdered. And the pursuer, we see him standing with what in his hand? A knife. You saw the movie, I've seen, right? He's standing there with a knife in his hand and also covered with blood. Can the Sanhedrin inflict the death penalty on the pursuer? Yes or no?
Yes.
No,
Why not?
because no one saw the crime
Beautiful.
being committed.
Very good. There were no witnesses that saw the murderer. The Torah of truth, the Rambam says, comes to prohibit his execution with God's statement, do not kill a person who has not been proven guilty. And our sages in the Mechilta say the following, even if they saw him chasing after another guy to kill him, and they warned him, he's a Jew, he's a son of the covenant. If you kill him, you're going to be executed. But the two went out of his sight, and they found one murdered with the sword in the so-called murderer's hands, dripping blood. One might think it can be executed. Therefore, the Torah says, do not kill a person who's not been proven guilty.
You can prove him guilty with the blood, with the murder.
That's called, in English, British constitutional law, circumstantial evidence. Okay, you might question this law, the Rambam writes, and say that it's unjust because there are some possibilities that are extremely probable and others that are extremely unlikely and others in between. The category of possible, the Rambam says, is very broad. And if the Torah allowed the high court to punish when the offense was very probable and almost definite, then they would carry out punishment in cases which were less and less probable, until people would be constantly executed based upon flimsy estimation and the judge's imagination. God exalted be, he says, he closed the door to this possibility. And Hashem forbade any punishment unless there are two witnesses who are certain beyond a doubt, meaning they're going to be interrogated with various interrogations, as the Talmud teaches us, Masechet Sanhedrin, and only that. And therefore, we don't inflict punishment even when the offense is most probable. I'm stopping here in the middle of the reading of Sefer HaMitzvot that I just read. If anyone wants a copy, they can have it, or copy it. Sometimes you want to have it. Yeah, I'll make another copy afterwards.
So, sir, in the context of the Chuma, lehavi means to bring
A bad true report. Lehavi, to bring. Whereas the Torah uses a different word for the others. My dear friends, we are truly understanding this Rambam's work, that it's based upon true faith, that the activity of our court down below, some of you are having some legal, moral problems with this law. I can see it right now, because we have to include one more matter. The court of Israel is a shaliach of God. If for any reason the court cannot bring to punishment the proper justice that you and I would want to have, do you know who's running the world? Jacob says, God is running the world. Does God have other agents in this world? Or does he only have the court of Israel to execute punishment?
Oh, yes.
He has many shlichim in this world to execute things. And certainly justice can be brought without a doubt. Therefore, don't have a heavy conscience on your shoulder or in your heart that you have to release the so-called murderer with the absence of clear testimony. You should know that he is the Dayan Emet. What did I just say? The true judge. And God has all different types of establishments and ways in order to punish the person that's obligated. Now, let's get to Yosef and his brothers. We cannot judge the brothers of Yosef. As I just mentioned before, they're all Gedolim, they're great, they're giants, they're all tzaddikim, much more than you and I can imagine in our minds. However, we see that they didn't get along. And we see that there was even sin'ah, which I will explain later. The name of Rabbi Tzvi the Cook is not just hatred, but they have a grudge against him. It's not hatred, they have a grudge against him. And therefore, when they see or feel that their liberties are about to be taken away from themselves, they first will escape, and only later will they think they have no other choice but to kill him, and then third, save him but sell him. We want to suggest that the root of the mistake made here by the brothers is that they judged Yosef based on estimation, based upon evaluation, almost certain evaluation, but what is not certain is not right. And that's why we brought the words of the Rambam here. Mr. Hirsch asked time and time again the difference between lehavi diba and lehotzi diba. They, when they see Yosef going and speaking bad reports to the father, they're assuming, I repeat the word, they're assuming that what is Yosef doing?
Lying.
Thank you. Exactly. That he's lying to his father. And he's not telling the truth. That's assumption, mistake. Assumption mistake number one. Assumption mistake number two in verse 4. Vayiru echav. Look at the verb. Vayiru echav. They saw. They saw. Do you see me? Do you get me? I see you. They evaluated. Now look at the wording. Ki oto. Who's oto?
Yes.
Yosef. Very good. Ahav avihem mikol who? Mikol who? Echav. Read it again. What inference may you make? Russell?
That they hated him because their father loved him more than them.
What does it say? Mikol echav, Russell. What could have the Torah stated? It could have said Mikol banav.
Which it did the pasuk before.
When Yosef is expressing love, he loves all of them. And he has special love to his son. And you know what? That son is special. He's like me. He has the wisdom, the abilities, the attributes. I want to don him with this royal clothing, the special garment, which is accepted to be done, he thinks. And he does it. But the brothers don't see that. They see that the father loves Yosef of all the brothers. It doesn't say of all the sons. Had they evaluated that they're loved by the father, the Torah would have said that they see that the father loves them of all the sons, but it doesn't say that. Evaluation or assumption mistake number two. And for that, vayisneu oto. But I don't want you to fall and understand that the word sinah here really means hatred. It more means, like Rabbi Tzvi the Cook would explain, there's a very important point I must make right now. We said that these two portions of the week, this Vayeshev and the following Miketz, are going to be teaching us about the tribes of Yaakov. We're about to be learning about how the nation of Israel, the public of Israel, will be built from these 12 components, from these 12 building blocks. And in order to build a nation from 12 shades, from 12 different colors, from 12 different talents, it's going to be complex, very complex. Everyone has a certain trait that the other doesn't have. They're all righteous. They're all so special. It's going to be done through these crisis situations. To build a great lofty nation here in this world of the physical realm, of the realm of personalities, it's going to take a complex situation. It's not going to come easy. Anything that's greater in spirituality requires more difficult work. Anything that's on a higher level of holiness, to reach it is not going to be simple. It's not going to be, God didn't promise us a rose garden that we reach without difficulties. Okay? Do you have difficulties in life?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really? I didn't know. You too, Mr. Resnick?
Too many.
So apparently, both of these gentlemen are aspiring for great heights of their heritage, of the Jewish people, of Torah, of Eretz Yisrael. The greater the values are, the greater the difficulties involved, Mr. Noam. Did you know that? Okay? And you thought it's like apple pie and Chevrolet? Huh? No, you didn't think it's apple pie and Chevrolet. Okay? And therefore, we're going to be learning about these complex situations. Some questions, and then we're going to go on. Jacob.
You used a word that I forgot what it meant. It was like slicha or something like, or like, not like
Shaliach.
Shaliach. Yeah,
Shaliach.
Yeah, what is that again?
I'm not going to tell you. You know what it means. Tell him what it means.
I
Shaliach.
don't know.
It's a messenger.
A messenger.
That's what I thought. It was like angel or like a sage.
Shaliach is a messenger.
That's what I thought.
Right. God has many shlichim to provide justice in the
That's what I
event that the
thought,
court
yeah.
cannot provide justice.
I knew that.
Okay.
Nowadays it's different because you can get it on video. You
What?
can get someone killing someone on video.
Ah.
No witnesses.
That will not help probably in the law court of Israel.
That will not.
Court of Sanhedrin, no.
You have a video of the guy stabbing
It's
the
not
other guy, the guy falling, but there are no witnesses.
So we're saying to you, don't worry. He's watching everything. He can take care of anyone and everyone. It's not enough for Torah law. The Torah says, and I quote, Al Pishnei Edim Yakum Davar, based on two witnesses.
There was
Shalom
no
Aleichem.
video footage back then, but nowadays, by watching the video footage, it's essentially.
Probably not. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You had a question, Renan?
I know, I have something to add. Like when Yaakov went to Padan Aram and he saw the bad shepherds, it looks like the same midot that Yosef had. He see his brothers doing something.
He cares.
that
Very
it's
good.
not-
Very nice parallel.
He cannot handle this, and
Beautiful.
he needs to.
Beautiful. But he goes to someone that can change the situation. He goes to the Abba. He goes to the Abba. Yaakov. Abba. These kids are messing up with this and that. He cares about their spiritual future. It's not that he's what you and I might say amongst brothers and sisters, tattletaling,
Snitch.
sniffing,
Snitch.
snitching on someone else. It's not for that. It's not just some gossip where he cares spiritually for the future of the Jewish people. So, gentlemen, let's get back to the point here. One moment, Amos. We said about the simple pshat here, there are 4 facts. Yosef was how old?
70.
Yosef was what employment was he working? Roetzon, a shepherd. He was, though, a servant or helping out which particular brothers? Bilhah, the children of Bilhah and the children of Zilpah. And fact number 4, we said, Yosef would tell his father negative events about his brothers. Now, the first 3 facts, okay? 17, shepherding with his own, and he was helping or serving out the Achim. Does that require having a grudge against him? Of course not. So what was the problem? The misevaluation, the misassumption of the brothers. Okay, they could say he's like this or like that, and so on and so forth. But here we can see a misevaluation. Only we get up to fact number 4 when he's telling a negative report about his brother. Okay, does it say Vayave Yosef? But it doesn't say Vayotzi Yosef. We said Lotzi is to slander. Remember that. And that's what's written by the spies in the book of Bamidbar. Hotza'at dibar. It's written again in the book of Psalms about that event. Lotzi diba is to tell a lie. So havat diba is a word, is the wording of truth that said privately, like we said before, without publicizing, only to one person, and therefore he cares. Exactly what Renan said. Yosef cares about his brother's behavior, and for that, he goes to someone who has the ability to correct or fix that matter. And what do you think the brothers imagined? That the words of Yosef is probably something like Hotza'at diba. So we're beginning to understand misevaluation and misassumption. Mr. Amos.
My question is about, not a question, but are they afraid because first of all, the sons of Leah protect him in the pit, but over here, those two boys, those 2 sons from those Bilhah and Zilpah, they are afraid of maybe something coming like Esau and Ishmael, that they will be putting somewhere, behaving because they are behaving on their feeling like we will be putting somewhere where we don't want to be.
I don't think so. But there is explanation that to the kids of Bilhah and Zilpah, he can show his supremacy. He can show his heights, his greatness over them. And that's why when he's not at work, who is he hanging out with? B'nai Bilhah and B'nai Zilpah. Because to them, their mothers are the maidservants. They're not the mothers of Israel. The mothers of Israel were Rachel and Leah. And there he's hanging out with them because he can show his supremacy because he's younger than all the others. Remember, Yosef was was only born, he was the last son born in Chutz La'aretz. So I don't think we're doing this point here. Okay, let's go on to, by the way, Velo Yachlu Dabro L'Shalom, the last wording of verse 4. Velo Yachlu Dabro L'Shalom. What do we understand? That Yisrael, who has his clear understanding and thought that I have to make Yosef someone special. That's why the name Yisrael is used, because he's thinking of Klal Yisrael, the nation that will be coming out of him, and not because of some personal matters of Yosef, but he says that Yosef will be a leader, and therefore he gives him this special clothing, the special royal robe or cloak to wear, which he sees the wisdom in Yosef. He sees the nature and the talents that he can be a leader of brothers. And now he has a special love for him, and so on and so forth. Yet the other sons cannot speak, only V'lo Yachlu Dabro L'Shalom. They can't see the peace in this, the good of this. And they're evaluating again in a bad way. Okay? If the father decides to give pinukim, to give gratuities, and to give someone especially, yet there's no argument here. There's no way they're getting to peace here. That's how the other brothers see it, because they see always the father is saying the right things about Yosef more than anyone. They're afraid of maybe things that happened in the past. In the past, Avram decided on behalf of Yitzchak and not Yishmael. In the past, Yitzchak decided on behalf of Yaakov and not Esav. Could it be happening again? Maybe these thoughts are coming into the minds of the brothers. Could it be that we're going to be pushed aside? And Yosef will be attributed as the leader of everyone? They're thinking that Klal Yisrael has to be built out of 12 building blocks, and one cannot be over all the others. They're not understanding what's happening. And now a dream happens. Pasuk verse 5. Vaychalom Yosef chalom. Wow. Vayaged le'echav. He shares it with his brothers. Vayosifu otzeno oto. Interesting. Does Yosef know that his brother's not getting along with him? Obviously. He's not stupid. So why does he share the above mentioned chalom, which we're about to read? What is the content? Who do you tell your dreams to? Someone that you love. My brothers, I love them. I love them. And therefore I want to share it with them. A chalom, you could say, words of vanity. But you know, Chazal say that chalom can have an aspect of prophecy. Can have an aspect of prophecy. We're not talking, about, people like you and me that, we start imagining things in Disneyland and in imaginatory land, and we're imagining things not concrete, not real. The chalom of a Yosef is about the building of Klal Yisrael. And that even adds more fire. Pasuk Vav Vayomer Aleim. He says to his brothers, Shim'una. He's polite. He uses the word na, which is please. Listen, please. Hachalom hazeh shachalamti. Follow the wording in Hebrew, please. This is the dream that I dreamt. V'hinei, and behold, anachnu, we're together. First of all, anachnu. Notice, we're together. And where are we working? Me'almim alumim betoch hasadeh. We're working in agriculture. This could be a great symbol that the future of the Jewish people were going to be an agriculturally based nation, which happened, of course. Okay? It could be in the future. And we're all gathering sheaves of corn, of wheat, of whatever. Vine. Every time you see the word vine, surprise. Kama alumati v'gam nitzava. It was my sheaf, the one that I did, tied together, made, and it stood erect. Vine. Wow. I noticed this is which time the word ine is being mentioned in this pasuk. Do you also notice? Third time. Very good. Tisuben alumotechem. Your alumot are misubim. Look at me. On the Seder night, the 4 questions. Kulanu misubim. Thank you. Reclining. Misubim. Right? There's a junction on the Tel Aviv Expressway called Tzomet Mesubim, right? It's called the Machlif. It's an exit called Mesubim, based on what? On the Rabbi Akiva, not Rabbi Akiva, on Mesubim that we're reclining together. Your alumim, your sheaves, we're bowing down. We're reclining. I'm sorry. Vatishtachavene, even what? Bow down to my aluma. Yosef is given a dream. He understands that it's something divine, and that he has what type of talents?
Totally stories.
What kind of talent is he?
Prophecy.
But what type of talent is this dream relating to?
Leadership.
Leadership. Hanhaga, manigut, lanig, to be a leader, someone special. Vayomlu Echa, but his brothers say to him, look at the hey. Hamalochtim loch aleinu. That's the hey of the question. Do you see that? Hamalochtim loch aleinu. Im mashol timshol banu, question mark. What can they not see? What can they not accept? What they thought before. That each of us equally are going to be the building blocks of what later will be the composition of a nation of God. It can't be that one will rule over the other. One will subdue your character traits, your talents, not allow your colors or shades to be exposed. That's what they're asking. Vayosifu od siloroto al chalamotav v'al divarav. So here, again, we see in these psukim, maybe they're thinking that the chalom could be hevel havalim, words of vanity. Okay? A person sees, imagines things in his sleep, and it's not real. But we know that a chalom, that these giants could be amiti, could be true, could be, like you said, nivuat emet, the prophecy of truth, meaning it's a message from who? From Hashem. In any event, we see again the brothers judging Yosef positively. No. They're assuming, judging him in a negative way, and they are coming to comment on the dreams of Yosef as if Yosef wants to do what to us? To rule over us. That's how they are commenting. Do you understand? This is their assumption. This is their commentary. Okay? That's how some of the Mefarshim explain. So this is dream number 1. Do we still have time for dream number 2? Yes, let's go ahead. Pasuk Tet. Pasuk Tet, verse 9. By the way, again, do we understand well that the brothers don't see positively at Yosef, yet Yosef still shared the dream with him? Why would he share the dream with them? What's the reason?
Well, he might have been really young and not understanding these things.
No. He's 17 years old. He's a giant in godliness.
Okay,
They're all righteous.
He wanted to be honest with them and explain to them that
honest?
Don't hate me. I'm just better than you.
Is it because
That no. So again, I want to avoid that understanding. That's learning the scripture without Torah Shebaal Peh, without understanding the greatness of these individuals. We're dealing with giants. Giants, capital letters, each of the 5 letters. Giant, right? 6 letters, whatever. Why is he telling them?
Is it because he thinks his dream is like a revelation or a prophecy?
Very good. Let's go stage 2. If you have a revelation or prophecy, what are you not allowed to do, as the Torah tells us in the book of Dvarim?
Keep it to yourself?
Very good.
Why didn't you know?
Lich. Buy yourself a falafel. Lichbosh. Without mustard.
That's true. No mustard ever more.
Lichbosh et nevuato. One of the lichbosh. What does lichbosh mean? To conquer. You're not allowed to conquer your nevuah, your prophecy. Lichbosh is to conquer. What does it mean to conquer your prophecy? Like you said, to stifle yourself, not to share it with others. That's maybe the reason the commentators explain. He understands that his chalom is nevuah. And if it's nevuah and it's reflecting his brothers, he must tell him. Otherwise, he's going to be over transgressing koveshet nevuato. He's going to be stifling his prophecy. Yes, Ruben.
So that's an interesting point you make. He must have already known the meaning of the dream when he told his brothers. And the reason why I say that is because the Gemara says that you shouldn't tell your dream to someone that asking for an opinion of what your dream is, because they could give a bad interpretation. And then the first interpretation of the dream is incorrect.
He's not going to them to ask, what do you think of my dream? He's telling them that he's going to be a leader over others. In the long run, as the Talmud says, in the formation of this divine entity called the nation of Israel, they're going to have two anointed kings, as if two Mashiachim. There's going to be the spiritual leadership of Israel called the Mashiach ben David. But primary or former to that will be Mashiach ben Yosef. He will be the economic minister, the organizer, the man of logistics, the man that's able to plow the fields, to prepare the economics, to prepare the plan of how we're going to settle the land, and so on and so forth. We're going to see it later on a national scope. We're about to learn it in a few parshiot, that he becomes the second in command to the greatest empire in the world. In this time, the Egyptian empire is made number 2. He's Mishneh Lamelech. What did I just say? Mishneh Lamelech. The second in command. Mishneh from the word Shnaim. He's the second in command. So he's God is prophesying him, and he's sharing it to his brothers. But no one understands what's going on in the world except he. And they're afraid. We're going to be subdued. It doesn't make sense. We know that there's a prophecy that the nation of God called Israel after our father Yaakov will be comprised of 12 building blocks, 12 tribes. And now we're ready for the second one. Pasuk Tet, follow the Hebrew. We have to end this share with this. Vayichalomot chalom acher. Vayisaper oto le'echav. Vayomer, hine. Again, the 4th time, right, Renan? Chalamti chalomot. V'hine, the 5th time. Hashemesh vayarech, the sun and the moon. V'chadasar kochavim mishtachavim li. But he doesn't just relate it to his brothers. This time in Pasuk Yud, Vayisaper el aviv v'yelechav. Was the first dream, was the story told to his father?
No.
So why is the second one told to his father?
Because his father's in the second one.
How is his father represented? It says too.
He's the moon.
There's a Shemesh and there's a Yerech. Obviously, plus Achadasar Kochavim, 11 stars. So possibly the Shemesh Yerech is the father and mother. Oh, 1 second. Who's the mother of Yosef?
Rachel.
What happened to her?
She's not alive yet.
So how do we solve this? For this and more in tomorrow's Shi'ur.
And it's only Eser, it's not Eser Echad. That means that there's the who is
Planning that.
Interesting.
there was a Binyamin already, isn't it?